Ella LeBain, hope I pronounced your name correctly. Welcome to Nature of Reality Radio. Heard about you from another interview that you did. I believe it was a Portal to Ascension, maybe, where you talked about your Who's Who in the Cosmic Zoo book. And well, that's not the only thing we need to talk about, that subject of who's in the Cosmic Zoo. There's more things to talk about, as you brought up on your pre-show talk with me over the phone just now. So, but before we get into that, people need to know who you are. Who are you? What have you experienced that caused you to do the stuff that you do? And again, I need to ask you to keep it brief because we've got an hour and you have a very good list of subjects worth talking about, including some present day things that came up since your last interview that you want to talk about. So I will shut up and put myself on mute. I don't have Alex Jones-itis. I do not interrupt my guests. So you are free to knock yourself out. You've got the floor.
Well, hello, Andrew. Thank you for having me on your show. Yes, I am the author of a book series, Who's Who in the Cosmic Zoo, all nonfiction. I connect the dots to the end time prophecies and disclosure of alien life, extraterrestrials, gods, angels, exoplanets, and space controversies. I have a background in science. I was educated in Israel at the Biological Research Center of the Negev with a degree in social sciences and biology. And then my life's work has been in cosmology. I got a basic degree in astronomy after that. And so I've been an experiencer all my life. I've had multiple types of experiences, both positive and negative. So that caused me to dig down some deep rabbit holes to try to figure out what was going on. And that is what my books are sharing, what I learned. So yeah, here we are.
Wonderful, wonderful. So before we get into that Cosmic Zoo subject matter, you mentioned the war that's going on. We got two wars going on. The one involving Russia and Ukraine still is not over. And the whole thing now just happened with Israel and Gaza, the whole Jews, Palestinians thing in Israel going on again. Word on the street is that it was actually at the very best stage to happen by Benjamin Netanyahu and his cronies in the Israeli government. They actually let it happen. Some say it was not Hamas that did the actual attack. Well, if they did the attack, the Israelis knew about it and let it happen.
My goodness. Well,
you're going to get into that. Oh, give your take on that.
You had me on here today to straighten that out, because that's a big, fat, whopping lie.
And please do get into the spiritual issues too.
When it comes to war, the very first casualty of all war is the truth. Okay, so there's an old saying that lies will travel halfway around the world before the truth gets their boots on. And that is what you just said. I don't know. I've heard what you said. I know that there's these, it's propaganda, and it's absolutely, unequivocally, 100% false. Okay, so first of all, this is an ancient war. Okay, this goes way back to the Old Testament times. Okay, Hamas is written in the Bible like 50 times. Okay, I have all the scriptures. I'm actually getting ready to do a blog on this for this very reason, to highlight this. This is not a war between Israel and Palestinians. This is between Israel, okay, and the rest of the Muslim world, who does not want Israel to be there, okay? So if anyone understands history, all the world wars are connected. World War I was connected to World War II, and World War III will be a continuation of World War II. And what happened at the end of World War II? Well, first of all, everybody knows about the genocide of Jews through the Nazi Jewish Holocaust, okay? And then what happened was that the United Nations and the Balfour Declaration with England decided to give that land to the Jews so that they had a place to go. And they've been trying to undo that ever since, okay? So that is the basis for World War II, which what happened on October 7th, okay, was by no means done through Benjamin Netanyahu or the Israeli Mossad. And by the way, the Israeli Mossad is devoted and dedicated to protecting Israel. Okay, so there is absolutely no way that anyone can convince me, stand on their head one way or the other, that they planned this or that they made this happen or that they allowed it to happen. Okay, so this was done through Hamas. Okay, Hamas which in Hebrew means violence, by the way. Okay, their whole charter. Okay, this is not a conspiracy. This has been out there, public, spoken, written by all these organizations, all these proxy groups of Iran. Okay, so the end time prophecy is about the Muslim nations, the revived Roman Empire. Okay, so all the countries, if people know their history, go back to the maps, and what the Roman Empire ruled over has now become Muslim countries. Okay, so you've got, first of all, the Bible talks about Persia and how Persia launches an attack on Israel. Well, today we call Persia Iran. Okay, so the ancient names might have changed, but the characters, the geography is the same. The same thing with the Palestinians. It comes from the word Philistines, okay, which was attached to the land of Israel when the Romans ruled it. And the reason that they called it Philistia, and it got watered down through language, which became Palestine, was to humiliate the Jews that they were suppressing under Roman rule. Okay, so that's history. These are facts. And also, it's in the Bible as well. So they are part of the ancient end time prophecy as part of the cast of characters. And there's about a dozen of them, okay, that come against Israel in the end time war. So for your listeners out there, if they want to read about it, it's Psalm 83, Ezekiel 37, 38, and 39, Amos 12. It's the book of Daniel 9, and even Revelation. So I connect all these dots in my book series to expose who this cast of characters are and how disclosure, okay, of aliens are going to come up from inside the earth through this crisis, through this end time war. Okay, so one of the key points about this prophecy is that World War III happens. It says all these nations, and it lists them by name. Okay, Lebanon, Libya, Sudan, Yemen, Turkey, which used to be secular and now it's Islamic. Okay, Erdogan wants to be the leader of the Islamic coalition. That's what they've been trying to do for the past few decades. Okay, and Iran, and people must know that there are faction wars within Islam between Sunnis and Shias. So what just happened recently was that on two major events happened that triggered this war. One, September 11th of last month of 2023, President Biden and Qatar decided to release the $6 billion that were being held to Iran, okay? And this had to do with their assets. There was a freeze on them. So they released it, and then a week before this happened, Israel and Saudi Arabia were involved in an alliance, in a peace treaty. So if anybody understands what's going on in the Islamic world, Iran and Saudi Arabia are arch enemies. They hate each other, okay, because one is Sunni and one is Shia. So when they got wind that the Saudis were going to ally with their enemy, which is Israel, and they're both enemies, they didn't like that. Okay, so that's and it fell apart because Hamas did this attack. So Gaza, the Gaza Strip, has, even in the Bible, belonged to the Philistines. The Philistines were ancient giants, okay? And this is where the alien presence comes in. They were giants, okay? Everybody knows the famous Bible story of David and Goliath. Goliath was a giant, okay? And where did all the giants go? Well, besides many of them were killed and murdered and wiped out through floods and all kinds of stuff, the rest of them went underground. Okay, so if anyone has read my fourth book, Covenants, okay, I have a very extensive chapter on UFOs in Israel. And I worked with one of the leading ufologists, who's now passed now, Barry Hamish, who shared his research, gave me permission to republish it, which I did, and weaved it into my mix, about all these sightings in Israel, in modern Israel, okay, since the 1990s, of giants coming through portals, coming out from underground, showing themselves. I mean, there's all these types of reports. People can go look it up. Okay, so my point is that Israel is an ancient portal. And there are many portals. The whole planet is full of portals, okay, to the inner earth civilization. There are multiple dimensions under our feet. And this is evidenced in ancient scriptures. The books of Enoch talks about it. Recently, in the past decade or so, one of our leading physicists, Michio Kaku, came out through physics and said that they determined that there were 11 dimensions to planet Earth. Well, when I heard that, I thought, that's very interesting, because the ancient scriptures in the books of Enoch talks about 10. So if you add this dimension that you and I are talking in, which is the third dimension, that makes 11. Then I went and did this extensive research in the scriptures and the Bible. And the Bible even gives us about 5 different dimensions that are already underground. Okay, so, you know, there's so much going on under our feet. And this is what the big alien reveal is going to be. All right, people think that there are visitors coming from outer space to come and connect with us. And not that that doesn't happen, okay, but the alien presence, or let's just say invasion, if people want to use that word, it's already happened. Okay, they've been here all along. We've been living with them. They live amongst us. We coexist with them, and we have been for millennia. Okay, it's just been very heavily and cleverly covered up. So let's take the Vatican for example. So today's Vatican, by the way, the word Vatican is Latin for divining serpent. Okay, and the Church of Rome created a lot of this warfare back in 325 AD. I mean, if people know the history, Rome was in charge of Israel. We have multiple countries that have occupied the land that today we call Israel. And why do we call it Israel? Because of the book of Genesis, because that's what it became. It started out as the land of Canaan, and then the God of Israel blessed Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob became Israel. So Jacob got the blessing of the land, okay, and his sons became the 12 tribes that got to live in the land, and that became the kingdoms of Israel. And there was a north kingdom and a south kingdom. And so the land doesn't belong to anyone per se except the God of Israel. So this is an ancient space portal, okay, which is evidenced in the Sumerian cuneiform literature, and that was translated by the late great archaeoastronomer Zachariah Sitchin, who I had the honor of studying with, interviewing, and befriending in the 1990s. So he influenced my work because I learned a lot from him. And one very key point is that he brought out from the cuneiform tablets and this and you know the artifacts that he was privy to in the British Museum in London, was that Jerusalem is an ancient space portal. And that's why it's the eye of the storm. That's why every country has been trying to get Jerusalem. Okay, and I can go down a long list of things, and I don't want to bore you or your audience about the history, but it's very clear that they're fighting over it. Okay, and who owns it? The God of Israel. Okay, so people think that the land, okay, so they call it the Jews occupiers, they call the Palestinians occupiers. Everyone's been trying to occupy this land since God gave it to the 12 tribes of Israel, which all went out into the diaspora. So I traced where these tribes ended up. And for instance, like Joseph was given the double portion, his sons were Manasseh and Ephraim, and that is England and America. Okay, so I also traced that there's evidence of ancient Israel here in America, in Africa, in Europe, in Afghanistan, in Japan, in China. I mean, they went in all different directions. And this is important because it has to do with the end time prophecy. When all of these tribes come together in Israel. Okay, so the book of Revelation talks about 144,000 from each, 12,000 from each tribe, and that they all end up in the land of Israel, and they become this remnant to fight this end time war against this final Antichrist. So everyone asks, so who is this Antichrist? Okay, well, the scripture and the prophecy says that he's going to come out of the revived Roman Empire. Okay, and the revived Roman Empire now is Islamic. Okay, so this is an ancient war, okay, against freedom of religion, freedom of sexuality, because Islamics, they believe that everybody needs to be under them, and it's a death cult. They believe that they're serving and honoring Allah by killing people and subjugating women and children. And the crimes that happened in Israel October 7th and 8th, that was done by Hamas, that is on video all over the place. I mean, all you have to do is look at it. This is not a fabricated or a lie. There's no way. Israel was shocked because they did it underground, okay? And that's what this incentive is about. What they're doing now is they're trying to secure Gaza because they work underground, okay? So without getting too much into militaristic logistics here, that's how it happened, and it was funded. They're funded by Iran. Iran has many proxies. Hamas is only one of them. Hamas is just like ISIS. There's Daesh, there's Hezbollah, which is way more organized and advanced technologically and militaristically than they are. Also funded by Iran. Okay, the Boko Haram, which we see in Africa all the time, the Taliban, which is Afghanistan. These are all arms of the same dragon. So it's like 10 heads to the same dragon. And this is nothing new. There's nothing new under the sun. Okay. So, like I said at the beginning, the first casualty of war is the truth. So, people want to say, oh, that this is not done. Israel did not do this to themselves. They wouldn't. The Hamas is there to protect Israel. This was something that went under their radar. Okay. This was an era in intelligence. They all admit to it. Okay, but it's exactly to the same day, 50 years. Okay, this is another piece because it's, there's two levels here. There's the physical, the stuff we see, and the spiritual. Okay, and this is a spiritual war. This is a war about between two different gods. All right, and people will say, oh, well, Islam is a religion of peace. Well, most of the Muslims want that, okay? But this is about a faction that doesn't care about peace. They want control, and they'll do it any way they can, through terror, through violence, and that's why the word Hamas means violence. And like I said, they're in the Bible. They're ancient. It's like the same war, different century.
Thank you. I hear myself echoing, but that should go away. All right, this whole thing about like Israel not knowing about it. Are you willing to think maybe it depends on the faction? Let's turn back the clock for a moment. Shortly after September 11th, 2001 happened, Michael Ruppert, who they say committed suicide, but I'm sure he was murdered, said...
I don't know who he is.
Okay, but anyhow, he's best known for talking about how the CIA ships cocaine into America all the time. That's what he's best known. But anyhow, he did a presentation, one of the first presentations ever to try to expose 9/11. He said, you may have heard a rumor that Mossad was involved with 9/11. Horsepucky, they knew it was going to happen. Well, at the time, people weren't really aware of everything that was going on. And what I think Michael Ruppert took into account there was that a faction of the Mossad knew it was going to happen. So they said something about it. But that was a completely different faction of the Mossad that played a role in 9/11. And there's a documentary called 9/11 Missing Links, which for all intents and purposes shows the Mossad had a role in 9/11. So you open to the fact that you say, okay, nothing you say is going to convince you they did it. Well, okay, well, hold on. Does maybe depend on the faction as to whether or not they knew or didn't know. Some factions did, some factions didn't. And the ones that didn't know were oblivious to the ones that did. Is it possible there?
I am not in a position to comment on anything you just said about 9/11. Okay. I don't know, and I'm not going to pretend to know. Okay. So I don't know who you're talking about. I am aware, though, of all the conspiracy theories about 9/11. Okay. I used to work in the World Trade Center. Okay. I am born in New York City, and I was educated in Israel. So I was told what happened on 9/11 was planned for a very long time. In fact, they tried to do it in 1993 and failed. So if you've got to look at the history and not take something out of context, which was a terrible day in our history, of course, but this was planned a long time before. All right, and they failed. They tried to blow up the World Trade Center in 1993, and they didn't. Okay, so they came up with another plan, and they succeeded. The fact that the Mossad is involved in some conspiracy theory that they had anything to do with it is absolutely false. I am open to the fact that they might have gotten wind of it, just like George Bush did. We have records that Condoleezza Rice got intelligence in August, 1 month before 9/11, that something was being planned, and it was given to George Bush Jr., and he ignored it. Okay, so these are facts that are out there. And the fact that there were so many companies in that building, they might have had some wind that something was coming down. So they, evacuated, or they didn't show up for work that day. So my point is that I was told, all right, in 1996, that I was living in Florida at the time, and I wanted to leave, and I was going to go back to New York and go back to my old job, and I was told not to. Okay, and this was by a psychic. So how does a psychic know, so many years in advance that something was going to go down? All right. So this was planned. It was even in the Matrix movie. I mean, there's all these connecting dots to 9/11. So to suggest that the Mossad did it is it is the most anti-Semitic thing you can do. Let me tell you something about narcissistic projection, okay? This comes from an ancient alien called Leviathan. People can look him up. He's in the Bible. And he is known as the twisted serpent, okay? And he's a dragon. And what he does, and he's like a python type serpent, which pythons, they squeeze the breath out of you. But also what they do is they twist. They twist around and around and around until the whole battle or the conversation is what they call in psychology complete narcissistic projection. Okay, I do something, I'm giving you an example, and then I blame you for it because I'm covering up my own crime. Okay, and that is exactly what we're dealing with in the media. Okay, and in spiritual warfare. This is spiritual warfare. Okay, as I said, and I'll repeat it again for emphasis, the first casualty of all war is the truth, because that is what they have. They have propaganda. They have, oh, who did this? We did that. No, you did that. Nobody wants to take responsibility. Let me just tell you something very current that I have just come out of dealing with to help people in my circles online to understand what happened. The other day, there was a few days ago, the hospital in Gaza was blown up and destroyed, and over 600 Palestinians and children died immediately. Okay, before anybody had a chance to catch their breath and look at video evidence, audio evidence, witness evidence, they immediately blamed Israel. Okay, but here's the thing, okay, is that they have video evidence and audio evidence that it wasn't Israel, because it was, and they even admitted it. The Hamas, the Palestinians, were launching rockets in lieu of President Biden's visit to Israel, and they were launching rockets to Tel Aviv and Haifa, and they were launching it from a graveyard, which was behind this hospital, and one of the rockets misfired and destroyed their own hospital. Well, what do? Instead of take responsibility, like, oops, we screwed up. It's what they call in war friendly fire. Okay, they blame Israel. Okay, this is classic, ancient, nothing new under the sun, anti-Semitism, anti-Semitic tropes, and it's in psychology, it's called narcissistic projection, where they blame the victim. Women have had to be the recipients of this for years through rape, and this is what Muslims do. They see women as chattel. Okay, that they are like animals to be used as sex slaves and children. And this war is about freedom. This war is about humanity. The same thing that went on in the Holocaust in Nazi Germany, okay, where people lost their humanity. And why? Because they wanted to wipe out a group of human beings, okay, an ancient race of human beings. And Hitler did not care about religion. This is what we are seeing right now, is a religious war. And and a race war. Hitler only cared about genocide to rid the planet of Jews. And how do we know this? Because he didn't care if people were actually practicing Judaism as a religion. He just cared that they had some grandparent that was Jewish, even though they weren't Jewish, and he threw them in the gas chamber. They wanted absolute extermination and genocide, and this is no different. The two flag, the Nazi flag and the Palestinian, the Islamic flag are the same. It's just two different flags, two different factions. It's the same energy. It's the same spirit. Okay, and the end time war ends up in Israel. Everything began there, and everything is going to end up there. Okay, and the quintessential end time prophecy is the return of the Messiah. Okay, so what we have in all the religions is a common denominator, which is the belief in a Messiah. In Islam, they call them the Mahdi. So if you want to talk about pre-planning and manufacturing, yes, because the Islamics know that in order for their Mahdi to return, the world has to be in absolute total chaos. So it's called a self-fulfilled prophecy. They are creating the chaos so that they can have their Mahdi. Okay, and this is written. This is not a conspiracy. It's out there. Iran, the day that this happened, October 7th of 2023, okay, the Iranian government put on camera, it's out there. They're in there cheering for the fact that they just slaughtered thousands of people, okay, and beheaded them. They beheaded babies. They pulled a fetus out of a woman's womb, okay, beheaded the baby while the baby was connected by the umbilical cord to this woman and mutilated her. Okay, who does that? And these are all innocent people. They have no, they're not, this is what Hamas, this is what jihad is about. And what happened on 9/11 was jihad, okay? It was jihad. They want to take over the world, okay? And people are asleep to this because they're just pontificating about, oh, we're all one and kumbaya, it's all one God. No, I prove in 5 books, over 500 pages, this is not the same God. These are two gods, ancient warfare between these two kingdoms on earth. It's a clash of two kingdoms on earth. And this goes way back to the ancient Sumerian, Enlil, Enki, Marduk. And all you got to do is read the history. It's the same stuff, different century. But what's going to be different now than what it was in the past is that we're at the end of a precessional age. And the precessional age of Pisces is coming to an end. And that is when there's a divine appointment for these gods, ancient gods, to return to harvest the earth and have this one final battle with the God of gods, okay? So in the ancient Sumerian, the father was Anu, and that's where we get the word Anunnaki from, okay? So a lot of people conflate, the Enki and the Enlil story to Yahweh, and actually that's a mispronunciation. It's not Yahweh. The God of Israel is similar, if you want to connect a dot, to Anu, which is the Almighty God, the God of gods. And how do I know this? I put this in my book, Who is God, book 2, because he had the power to punish these gods. Okay, so you have to be a God of gods in order to punish these lower gods with a small g. And that's what we're dealing with. This is an ancient alien war between these gods and between portals, ancient space portals, ancient land, and their remnants on this planet. Okay, this is also genetic. The Bible is very clear about the war between God's seed and what is called Satan's seed, or the seed of Cain and Seth. And I unpack all this for my readers to understand this in context of history and how this is playing out right before our very eyes. Okay, so people say, well, they don't believe in the Bible because, yeah, religion has corrupted so much truth. Back to the Vatican, they have been holding hundreds, thousands even of ancient texts that give us way more information about the ancient aliens, and it sits underneath the Vatican. 53 miles of library underneath the Vatican. It's like the ancient Library of Alexandria. Okay, so, in 325 AD, they decreed through Constantine's Creed that anybody who follows anything that was Jewish, the feasts of the Lord, and these are not Jewish feasts; they're the Lord's feasts. All the holidays, the Sabbath, unclean meat. They were considered anathema to Rome. That means you were done. You were excommunicated if you followed that. They took pieces of Judaism. It's called replacement theology. They integrated it into their already existing Babylonian religion of Rome. Okay, they switched out the gods from Mithras to Jesus, Semiramis to Mother Mary. They kept all the same ancient rituals, okay, which hasn't changed to this day. The Pope wears a mitre, which is fashioned after the ancient god Enki, who was the fish god. Okay, this is all in the records. This is not, it's not, but they've covered it all up. They've created, and they also helped to create Islam. All right, so that's why it comes back to them in the end times. That's why the book of Revelation fingers them literally. Okay, in Bible speak, the church is always referred to as a woman. Okay, so you're either the pure church, which is the virgin or the bride, okay, or the whore, which is the false church. So the Bible speak vernacular in Revelation is the whore who sits on 7 hills. That's Rome. The mystery Babylon, that's today's Vatican, comes and promotes the final Antichrist. So what did this Pope just recently do in the past few years? He created Chrislam. Okay, so there's 3 prophecies that we're going to see fulfilled. All right, one, they want to create a one world government. I'm sure that's no mystery to you. You're involved. You know about that stuff.
Well, hold on. I don't interrupt my guests often, but before you get into what the prophecies are, I need to set a few things straight, and some other things people have said that suggest that the prophecies you're talking about cannot possibly happen. First of all, the idea of a third world war, impossible, and there's 2 reasons for that. Akashic Records reader Andrew Bartz says they don't have enough resources at their disposal to do that, and also another reason, according to people like Alex Collier, the overlords, the Draco overlords, are actually gone. All that's left of the Archon system and the Illuminati system is what's left on Earth, which is mostly human. All the reptilian overlords from Draco Hydra and the malevolent Anunnaki factions, he claims they're all gone. So the powers that be that are still around don't have the luxury of going to the overlords and saying, my agenda is about to be stopped by the good guys, please come in and save me, or stop the good guys, or do something like that to stop them. That can't happen. And the idea of a one world government happening, well, that's kind of impossible for the same reasons. Too much of the bad factions are being taken out day by day as the Earth's frequency rises. So
well, I do not agree with any of that you just said. I think that's false information. Okay, the reptilians are definitely alive and well, living inside the Earth, living on the moon, living on Mars. Just look at the ufology. I've published tons of evidence with whistleblowers, and there's a ton of stuff to look at here, okay? And I do not give too much credence to channeled material, okay? So contact, yes. People face to face, yes, and there's a lot of those. There's a lot of people who have come face to face with these reptilian 9-foot tall lizard men, okay? And I have published that. So I encourage people to go look at the evidence, okay? I come from the legal field. My background is I'm a retired paralegal. So witnesses are considered legal evidence in a court of law. And that's the approach I take to ufology. Okay, besides my scientific background, I like to put forth witnesses. So not channeled, not people pulling in energies from different places, because we know that they can deceive. The scripture says that Satan, which is a Hebrew word for adversary or rebel, there's a bunch of them, it's not just one being, can come across as an angel of light, can masquerade, that's the word, masquerade. So I like to unmask these people and see what it is they're covering up. So back to the one world government. This is evidenced in the United Nations. It's evidenced in the APAC, Americans for a New Century. This is something that's been in the works for over a century and a half. This goes way back to World War I. So most people understand that, who are freedom fighters here in America, that they're pushing against this. George Bush Sr. even mentioned it in his speeches. Ronald Reagan spoke to the United Nations in 1987 and said, what if there was an alien threat, an alien presence already amongst us? Wouldn't we all come together, forget our boundaries, and come together as one world, okay? And the alien threat is going to be what's going to cause that. Now, I just published my new book, fourth edition of Who's Who in the Cosmic Zoo, book 1, which is an expanded version and has extra 20 chapters. And I came across a declassified document that I published in it because I pieced it together with a whistleblower friend who I knew in the 1990s, Donald Ware, who basically told me that the United Nations was going to be transformed similar to the United Federation of Planets, like in Star Trek. And how is that going to happen? Because of the alien presence. Because there's an alien nation that lives underground that wants to chime in to world affairs because they live here. Okay, it's that simple. And somehow they were going to weave their way into the United Nations. So I came across, and this is all published, a declassified document that surfaced in March of this year that was written by Albert Einstein and Robert Oppenheimer, and it was a letter to President Roosevelt. It happened right after World War II. Okay, and what they wrote, I published it, was they wanted President Roosevelt to understand that they needed to make policy, okay, this is exopolitics, policy about a potential alien presence in the United Nations. They wrote about this in 1940s, in 1948. So my point is that just because all this stuff has been bubbling and going on for 75, 80 years, everything there's a law of readiness. There's a law of timing. It's timing, okay? And what we saw happen on October 7th, which was exactly 50 years to the day, okay, of the Yom Kippur War of 1973, when basically Israel won territories back, and Jerusalem, 1967, when President Obama was in office, he wanted to reverse the 1967 war. Okay, so they fought a war to get their land back. They got Jerusalem back in 1967. So I have shown this whole timeline, okay, from when King David actually ruled as king in Jerusalem, the prophecies that the Lord God of Israel, okay, whose name is Yahuwah, said, it's his land. He's going to give it. He gave it to them. He let them go because they sinned against him. They went into idolatry and pagan worship and stuff like that. So they went into the diaspora. And in Ezekiel 37, you just read the whole chapter. It is literally the fulfillment of today's Israel. He said that he was going to, and people have problems with this word, reincarnate, rebirth, okay, that he was going to rebirth ancient Israel into a new nation, and it was going to be his. Okay, so really, this is not about the Israelis and the Palestinians, because in Israel, Arabs and Israelis live, work together. They're in parliament together. This is not an Arab-Israeli thing. This is about spiritual warfare between the God of life and the God of death. It's that simple. It's that simple, and it's ancient. So I have connected the dots that Enlil is connected to Allah based on linguistics, based on history, okay? And this is a death cult that they are in, okay? And they believe, and they've written it, and it's out there, that they're only going to honor this God through death. Okay. And, you know, most of us who come from the Judeo-Christian faith believe that we honor God through life. So we've got a clash of two kingdoms going on here. Okay. And it happens to be happening over an ancient land that we call today Israel. Okay. So it's not about the righteousness of Jews or Israelis. It's about the righteousness of the God of Israel, because, and he even says this, that this is going to be about him in the end, because he is returning exactly to the same portal, to the same mountain where he left. And that is what everyone is waiting for. So, but before he returns, the Mahdi, the Islamic Mahdi, surfaces. And the prophecy says in the book of Daniel that he makes a peace treaty between Israel and all of her enemies, which are basically the whole Islamic caliphate. And that is World War III. Okay, that is not the Battle of Armageddon, though. The Battle of Armageddon happens after. That is the final battle, and then it's over. So what we have also, and I just want to put this in there, okay, is that we have an ancient solar system that is our binary twin, the Nemesis Nibiru system, that again the Sumerian tablets told us was going to return, and that's already here. And we also put together the prophecies that you know, when Yeshua said, when you see these signs in the heavens, know that all this stuff is going to start to happen, and it is. That we hear wars, rumors of wars, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, you know, man's inhumanity to man, you know, people dying of fear, okay, heart attacks, just dropping dead all over the place. That when they see this stuff happening, they won't know what to do with it. So, you know, I give people hope, okay? I try to help with all of that by pointing them to faith in Yeshua, who is the Messiah. And he is the Jewish Messiah, he is the Christian Messiah, and he is also the Muslim Messiah, because he saves everyone. And he's coming to save the planet after this great war. This is happening. People don't want to believe it, and that's fine. Cognitive dissonance is a very big deal right now. Okay, we've gone through a lot with the pandemic, and now we're going to deal with this. And people thought of the alien. Where is alien disclosure? I get people asking me, where is alien disclosure in all of this? Is this going to push it back? No, just the opposite. All this stuff is going to come out from inside the earth, just as the prophecy says. We're going to have creatures, and that's why there's an uptick in cryptids right now. There's an uptick. People are, you know, I don't know, people follow MUFON and ufology. I'm a member of MUFON. I have a lot of MUFON friends that have done all this work. There's so much stuff coming out right now, okay? And that's because of the hybridization program that's going on underground. And also, the Bible prophecy says all these creatures are going to come out from inside the earth. There's your alien reveal.
Thank you. Wow, we've done a lot at speaking here. I guess we can go over an hour, since we do want to talk about some things. So maybe an hour of this interview will be free, and the last 15, 20 minutes will be pay-per-view. Let's see how much we can get in here. Cover a few things on the fly if possible. I'll try to get as many things as possible here. First of all, you mentioned you knew Zecharia Sitchin personally. I'd like to discuss this and maybe set a few things straight, because there's a lot of confusion about him and his work.
Sure. Yes.
People have, maybe you're aware of it. Yeah, among other things, they've said he was a 33rd degree Freemason, and others have actually said he was, if he wasn't a member of the Illuminati, he was at the very least compromised by it, because according to Leo Zagami, who I had on my show, he said that Sitchin was compromised by forces within the Vatican who gave him false information deliberately. And according to Akashic Record reader Andrew Bartzis, Sitchin's first three books are very accurate in terms of the events, but his timelines are a little bit off, which kind of leads you to think, okay, maybe because he was writing accurate stuff, the powers that be saw him as a threat. So they decided, okay, let's compromise him, give him false information, and even say some negative things about him in order to get people to not realize he was accurate. However, there were some that have very serious issues about the possibility that Sitchin could have been accurate because Carmen Bolter, who wrote the Pyramid Code, made the Pyramid Code documentary, she knew Sitchin for a little while. And she said, well, first of all, I got some issues about Sitchin, how he could have been accurate given some things about him. First of all, he had an office in Rockefeller Tower. You don't really get an office in Rockefeller Tower unless you have Illuminati connections, they say. Well, not necessarily, I'm sure. But anyway, the first thing, she also said Sitchin showed great reluctance to answer questions. And he would often use the line, it's in my books. It's in my books. It was like, she said it was like there was a code in his books that he was following, but was having difficulty remembering. And she also pointed out how Michael Heiser, the website sitchiniswrong.com, he runs that. He tried to claim that the terms Anunnaki and Nibiru don't actually appear together in any way that in the Sumerian text that would allow anybody to make a connection between them, which raises the question, how could Sitchin have come to the conclusions he came to when the tablets didn't even say anything that would validate his work? I asked that question to someone at a MUFON conference who knew Sitchin too, and she actually said that it was she did mention, yeah, Sitchin didn't really like answering questions that he didn't feel were worth answering, but she also said that it was actually the Greek text. And for whatever reason, this isn't really talked about much of it. He actually looked at the Greek text too, and it was from that and comparing it with the Sumerian text that he was able to conclude some of the things he did, including the existence of Nibiru. Go figure. But you knew him personally. Do you have anything to say about all this stuff and why he was the kind of person he was? A little strange, but still intelligent enough to take seriously, some say. And what do you have to say about how could he have come to the conclusions he came to when the Sumerian text didn't actually say what he believed?
Wow. Okay. Well, let me start with, yes, I knew him personally. Yes, I interviewed him. All my interviews and my experience is published in my fifth book, The Heavens, which is book 5 of Who's Who in the Cosmic Zoo. And I basically answer a lot of what you have just laid out to try to set the record straight. Okay, so I'll start off with, okay, you mentioned about the timelines and how people tried to discredit him. So I published this as to why that happened. Okay, and so there was an interview that he did that was a very pivotal, very, very important connection with the NASA chief astronomer, Robert S. Harrington, in Washington, D.C., in the early 90s. Robert S. Harrington was 50 years old, perfectly healthy. And I prove this because my fifth book is all about Nibiru. Okay, so this is part of research. Okay, so there was a time in our timeline where there was a blackout to any astronomer, anybody talking about Nibiru. And that started with an executive order by President Ronald Reagan in 1983, when NASA brought back the first picture of Nibiru through IRIS. Okay, and this is published, it's out there. And when he saw that, he basically worded it into a national security executive order that went with the Star Wars program, which he coined that phrase, the SDI, the Strategic Defense Initiative, which basically was putting weapons in space, then that they weren't allowed to talk about Nibiru. He wanted that word scrubbed from the dictionary, from everybody. Okay, and this is a fact. This happened. That's why there was a blackout. So of course, Sitchin's books started coming out in the 60s. So by the 70s, he was out there. Everybody was reading about the 12th planet, which was all about Nibiru. He published 12 books. Okay, he was a brilliant scholar. Okay, he was a Jewish man. And he, you know, even though he was born in Azerbaijan, he was raised in, you know, ancient Palestine before it became Israel and Russia. He knew 5 languages fluently. Okay, he had access to the British Museum in London to look at all these ancient tablets, many of which came out of from the Nazis, because, you know, the spoils of war, the Allies got all that stuff back and they put it in the museum, and he got access to it. So that's a little just history about who he is. Was he a 33-degree Freemason? I have absolutely no information or knowledge of that. He was a practicing Jew. And let me now address the discredit stuff. Is that because he was a practicing Jew, he was the victim of anti-Semitism. Okay, big time. All right. And I published a whole chapter on this, proving this, in my 5th book. So people can go and read about it. These are facts, historical facts. Okay. And you mentioned Hauser. Okay, I'm not a fan of Michael Heiser. All right, I believe that what he did was sinful, was very wrong. Okay, he was, you know, had this degree in Hebrew from the University of Wisconsin, and he basically committed libel and slander against Sitchin. And, you know, God doesn't like that kind of stuff. So it made him sick, and he ended up with this long, horrible illness, cancer that went on for 10 years and died. He passed in February. Okay, so I put this in my book because he did this after Sitchin died in 2010. And, you know, I'm not going to go down this road and do what he did and try to discredit someone because they're not here to defend themselves, which is what he did to Sitchin. You know, people can disagree. You know, the old world that I grew up in, I don't know how old you are, but I was born in the 60s. People used to disagree agreeably. They don't do that anymore. They want to wipe people out. And he might have had some differences of opinion about different words and how it was interpreted. Sitchin had his own understanding of things because he knew 5 different languages, okay? And he was able to take words and say, okay, well, this is what it means in this language, this is what it means in that language. So he put his own understanding of it. Okay, I'm out there publicly saying that even though I'm a student, a friend of Sitchin, I distinguish myself from him because I prove, and I believe that researchers, it's kind of like a baton race. You know, you get past the baton and you got to run with it and unpack it. When a researcher carves and pioneers an area of research, that's not the end. That's not the be all and end all and everybody just take it and that's it. The next person has to come and unpack it and add to it, which I have done in my book to honor him. I do not agree, though, that for his statement that the Anunnaki created humankind, and I prove this in my first book. Okay, I made a very big point in my conclusion chapter that, and I prove why that didn't happen, because there were human beings on the earth before the Anunnaki arrived. Okay, and the very story itself says that they came and then they implanted into the women. Well, women are humans, okay? So we were already here. There's also ancient civilizations of Atlantis and Lemuria that existed before the Anunnaki came. All right, so that's where I'm coming from. I do not believe the Anunnaki created us. I do believe, though, that they absolutely 100% manipulated our genetics, okay? And they downgraded us because, and I prove this because the humans that are in the book of Genesis lived to be 960 years old. And then they came and did something to our genetics and they downgraded us. We can't live past 120. So there's a different Homo sapiens sapiens that we are today versus the human beings that are recorded in the early texts. So that's where I distinguish myself from Sitchin. About your message, your comment about the timelines being off. This is a very important point. I published this in my 5th book as to why that is. Okay, and yes, the timelines have absolutely been manipulated through several things. I call it calendar shenanigans. So every single culture has manipulated the time through creating a new calendar. Okay, so let's just talk about the calendar we're on. Okay, today is October 20th, 2023. We are looking at a Gregorian calendar, which comes from Rome. Okay, which is named Gregorian after Pope Gregory. And it has absolutely no astronomical significance. Okay, whereas the Jewish calendar, which we're in 5784, is as close as we can get to a solar lunar combination. Okay, the Islamic calendar is purely lunar. They don't involve the solar. Okay, the Mayan calendar is purely galactic. Okay, it's based on the stars and our position of the sun in this galaxy. Okay, so every calendar has a different, tone to it. The timelines have been not only manipulated by the calendars, they've also been manipulated because every time Nibiru comes past the Earth, it changes time. Okay, and this is also evidenced in the ancient scripts. It's evidenced in the Bible. It's all there. Okay, and then as if that's not enough, okay, we also have CERN. And CERN has manipulated time as well. So not just CERN, we have the Philadelphia Project, we have the Montauk Project, we have the Mars Jump Room, Project Pegasus, all time travel projects that are documented, that our government has been involved in, okay, since the 1940s, that have altered timelines. I'm very big on the truth is stranger than fiction. If anybody is watching the new Marvel Loki series, it's all about this. It's all about the time travel. And one of my big monicas is that they put the truth in the science fiction, because that's the only way that people can grasp and understand these concepts, and also it gives them plausible deniability, so that they don't have to say, yeah, we did this, we created this, we tried this failed, this succeeded. So they give these concepts to the science fiction writers, the producers, and they make the entertainment out of it, but it's true. Okay, so this is why I do not make predictions, because the timelines have been manipulated. Okay, so but what I do is I can tell people where we are on the prophetic timeline. Okay, because that is going very accurately in order. Okay, and what just happened on October 7th was a major piece on that timeline that we can check off and say that's been fulfilled. So I lay a lot of this stuff out in my book so people could read it and see it and connect the dots in their own mind. And they, and I encourage people, put your Bible on the side, look things up, Google it, get your history, look things up, because it's all there. Okay, I just connect dots. All right, so that's my answer to Sitchin. I believe he was discredited due to anti-Semitism, not because of Freemasonry. Okay, and this is something that Jews, it's anti-Semitic tropes. They call Jews all kinds of things. All right, and the Rockefeller thing, it's like, well, I worked in that building. I have nothing to do with Freemasonry. First of all, it's a men's club. They don't even allow women in there. So to say that, oh, he was in that building, he must have been a Freemason, that's like a conspiracy stretch that just doesn't equate.
Yeah, it doesn't. And
it doesn't. I mean, I was in that building. I have nothing to do with Freemasonry. They wouldn't have anything to do with me. I'm a woman. Okay, so people get involved in these things. He was definitely, and I will say, because I know this because I interviewed him, that he was very tight-lipped about talking about time, and that was because, all right, and this is out there, I published this, I put this out there, is because they came down on him pretty heavy. They threatened him, and they said that if you tell anyone in your lectures when Nibiru, because him and Harrington corroborated. Okay, so Harrington is getting all this information from the NASA space telescopes, and Sitchin is coming from the past. And he's saying, well, this is what it says in the records. They came together and they corroborated and they agreed on almost every single point except maybe, whether it was Virgo or Libra, that the system was coming through the Southwest too. And NASA knows exactly where this is. Okay, I publish stuff all the time about, these planets of this Nibiru system that are orbiting our sun. You can see it. It's public. You just have to go and screenshot it. You go to the LASCO coronagraph, the SOHO, the Helio viewer, the GOES. They are watching. They have dozens of space telescopes watching the sun 24/7. They're not only watching sunspots and solar storms and coronal mass ejections. We are seeing planets around the sun. One of them orbits every 28 days, like clockwork. Okay, and then we're seeing gigantic spaceships show up around the sun. Okay, they're not comets, they're intelligent craft, okay, which is coming from this system. So one thing that they told Sitchin was never tell anyone. If you tell anyone when Nibiru is going to pass the Earth, we're going to shut you down. And that's why that is the number one question that everyone asked in all of his lectures. So when is Nibiru going to pass the Earth? And he would never say it. He was always very tight-lipped about it. Okay, so yes, the powers that be came down on him, but guess what? He never let it go. He always said one thing: it's not coming in my lifetime, and he was right because he passed over in 2010.
Right. I did, and also speaking of passing away, I didn't know Michael Heiser passed away. That was kind of new to me. So a lot of Stitching fans are probably saying good riddance, but not a very nice way to handle someone's death. But anyhow,
I was friends with him. I don't say good riddance. I am able to disagree agreeably with people. I don't need to hate people because I disagree with them. Okay?
right.
I mean, that's how I was raised, and that's the era that I come from, the 60s. Okay? So we don't have to think alike in order to be friends. Okay, I have many friends that don't think like me. I don't expect everyone to think like me, but when there's hate in people's hearts, that's a whole different ball game. We can all, we need to come together. We need to discuss things. We need to share different viewpoints to get the whole picture. Okay, many parts make up a whole. We're part of a grand tapestry. Okay, and I believe in freedom. I don't believe that everyone needs to think the same. And I don't hate people for not thinking like me.
Exactly. Now I want to get into the end times thing now because you mentioned that, and the last book of Sitchin was called The End of Days, although Leo Zagami said he actually called that book a load of rubbish, saying that Sitchin was compromised and fed false info by Corrado Balducci and other Vatican and maybe even some Zionist personnel to write that book. And he didn't know it was garbage and rubbish if it was, but I couldn't help but bring that up because, well, it says end of days and you talk about end times prophecy. Well, maybe did you ever check that book out? Is it a load of rubbish like Zagami claims? And does it tie in with the things that you talk about regarding end times, whatever end times is supposed to mean? Sounds so negative, but maybe it isn't.
Okay, so let me just help you with the words, okay? Because I'm really big on linguistics. And words matter because words create things and communicate and hopefully understanding, okay? So words, knowledge creates understanding. So let's talk about end of days or end times. I call it end times, okay? And this is based on astrology, all right? So, and the Bible. So So we are in what they call the precessional age of Pisces. Okay, and the ages astronomically seem to go backwards. So it's not like, okay, well, we're in Libra and the next sign is Scorpio. No, it goes the other way because of the way, it's more of a stellar thing than an Earth thing. Okay, but it is the sun going through this group of stars of our Milky Way. And so right now we're at 3 degrees of Pisces. So the how the houses are divided by 30 degrees, but it's not 1 to 30, it's 0 to 29. And this is a very key point because we're in a countdown. So it goes backwards. So it's 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, so when we get to 0 point of, that's when the precessional age actually shifts from Pisces to Aquarius. That is the end of this age. Okay, so when we talk about end times, when Jesus, Yeshua, talked in Matthew 24, when the disciples said, so when are you going to come back? And he lists this whole long litany of things that has got to happen before he returns. But what did he say? I will be back at the end of this age. And he was born at the beginning of the age of Pisces. Pisces is symbolized by the fish, okay, which is the symbol of Enki, which is the symbol of Christianity. And so he literally said so. He's coming back at the end of the age. So that's where we get the word end times from. Okay, so if that helps. So end times doesn't mean that, like the whole world is going to fold up and there won't be any more life anymore. No, it just means that there's going to be another age, a different age, and it's going to be a shift of kingdoms. So here in America, people don't think in terms of kingdoms anymore because, we kind of got liberated from the British monarchy and we think we're all, based on this Greek and Roman system with democracy and republics and all that. But the truth of the matter is the whole planet is organized by kingdoms, okay? So this is a clash of 2 kingdoms that are going to have their final battle. It's a divine appointment that is going to happen at the end of this age. Okay, so when Sitchin wrote his book, End of Days, and I have to be honest, I have not read every word of it, okay, so I'm not going to be able to comment on this and that, but I will say that he was relating to when the gods are going to return. So you can take one system and another system, and this is what I do, I connect dots and put it all together, it's still the same story. Like for instance, the floods, the Great Deluge is recorded in every culture, every religion. They're all saying the same story. So Sitchin he was relevant, and to speak to what you said about the Vatican. Okay, well, I have a lot to say about that. All right, because they play a starring role in the end time prophecy. As I already mentioned, they are fingered in the book of Revelation as the whore of Babylon, mystery Babylon, the beast. Okay, there's the beast, and then there's the little beast, and they are the little beast that props up the big beast. So that Antichrist person who comes as a human being, but the scripture says that he's going to come out of the revived Roman Empire. So we don't know who he is yet. He hasn't surfaced, he hasn't emerged, but it's very specific that he emerges on the world scene to end the war against Israel. So one of the things that American politicians kind of pride themselves in is trying to make peace in the Middle East. It's like one of their goals, they want to achieve it. So they try, but it never really works. This guy, he comes and he actually ends this war against Israel. And the war against Israel is from the Islamic Caliphate, the revived Roman Empire, which is a group of 10 nations, and I name them. They're all named. Okay, so they're all named in the Bible. Some of them are their ancient names. Some of them are still the same names. And one thing that it says is going to happen is that Iran, which is Persia, destroys Mecca, which is in ancient Arabia, which we call today Saudi Arabia because it's now run by the Saud family. It's still Arabia, because they have this ancient enmity between them. Okay, because they're not practicing the same, version of Islam. They're one is Sunni, one is Shia. So that is another aspect of it. And as I said earlier, there is a belief in the radical Islamic groups that they need to create this chaos. They need to kill, they need to bloodshed as much as possible in order to bring the Mahdi. And in many respects, that's exactly what's going to happen, because this Mahdi can be compared, okay, so the Islamic Mahdi matches in terms of their prophecy to Bible prophecy, the Antichrist, the final Antichrist. So we have to also look at the history. So Islam is a relatively new religion. It was created in the 7th century. That was helped by the Church of Rome. Okay, we call it today we call it the Vatican, but it wasn't called the Vatican back then. It was the Church of Rome. It wasn't even Catholic back then. Okay, Catholicism didn't come about until 1000 AD. Okay, so I'm very careful about that because there's a lot of good Catholics out there, and I'm not saying anything against Catholics. I'm talking about the historical Church of Rome. And Rome was the religion and the government were one. There was no separation between church and state. That's the reason why we adopted it in our Constitution, because we wanted to separate ourselves from the ancient world. Okay, but the ancient world, they made decrees, they made policies, it was religious, it was governmental, and that's what it was. So we have to look at this through the lens of a religious war. So they wanted power, they wanted control. So what did they do? The Pope wanted to take Jerusalem. So he sent his monks, okay, to this family, which was known as this warrior caste family, which was Muhammad. Muhammad was illiterate. The monks went there to groom him, to train him, and to help him to take Jerusalem for the Pope of Rome. Okay, and that's why if you read the Quran, it's the Bible just plagiarized and twisted. Okay, the same stories are there, but they just twisted it. So and I know, people think, oh, how can I say this? It's history. Okay, they helped create Islam. All right, so what did Muhammad do? He went, he did succeed. He took Jerusalem, but he didn't give it to the Pope. Okay, he kept it for himself. So we have these ancient wars that are I can read you a whole long list of different people who controlled Jerusalem since then. Okay, the Byzantines, the Ottomans, the Greeks, the Romans, the British. I mean, it just was going one after another. All right, and so Islam, is a relatively new religion. So coming back full circle from 750 AD to now, we have this Pope Benedict, okay, who's now created Chrislam, and this ties into the prophecy about the one world religion. He feels, and this is their charter, their goal is to create a one world religion. Okay, so as I was saying earlier, I can see how they can do this one world government. I can see that happening. Anyone who studies world affairs, United Nations, this, that, and the other thing, that can happen. I can also see how they can create a one world currency. They've been trying to do that for a while. Okay, where there's no buying or selling, and this is part of the prophecy. There is no buying or selling without this mark of the beast. And the beast is this antichrist system. Okay, that's what the prophecy says. But a one world religion, I for years was like, how the heck is that going to happen when people in the same religion can't even agree on things? Okay, you've got Christians at each other's throat. You know, right now, the only thing that unifies people, I mean, here, this is a fact. Okay, right before October 7th, Israel was the most divided politically, spiritually than it's ever been before. Okay, so Israel is fashioned after the British Parliament. They have their own parliament. There's all these different parties, and they were very divided. But whenever there's an attack on Israel, everyone comes together. They're like one. I mean, you've never seen anything like this. It is incredible. And here, this is a point that I make, when it comes to reptilian stuff, Machiavellian alien agenda is to divide and conquer. Because if they can keep us divided, okay, they can control us. They know that we, human beings, have power when we unify, when we come together in agreement. Okay, we had it very briefly after 9/11. America came together, but then lost it again. All right, this is what's happening right now as we speak today in Israel. They have never been united as they are right now against this force. As far as they're concerned, it's like, they're fighting the Nazis, but they're not. They're just jihadists. It's the same energy, the same demon. Okay, so being united is a very powerful thing. So how can anybody be united under one religion when we all have different viewpoints and different belief systems? Okay, I find I struggled with that for years. How is that possible? Okay, so this is something that this Antichrist spirit does, and the today's Vatican, is part of that. Okay, and I trace it back. It's the serpent energy. They don't worship Christ. They worship Lucifer, and they even say so. You can go listen to their mass on a YouTube channel and listen to them invoke Lucifer. And I wrote this in my second book, Who is God? Why that is. Because they had Jerome, they commissioned Jerome to rewrite the Bible in Latin, and whether it was deliberate, I don't know. Whether it was a mistake, it was definitely a mistake. How he mistranslated the Hebrew words for Hallel to Lucifer. Not even close. Hallel means, which was God, in Isaiah 14, God, the Lord basically rebuked this being for rebelling against him and called him Hallel, which in Hebrew literally translates to he who boasts in a foolish rage. Now, Sitchin talked about this stuff too. Okay, because he knew Hebrew. He was fluent. He was fluent in Hebrew as well. And he exposed a lot of these mistranslations, okay, that created not only misunderstandings, but false religions, all right? So the Vatican, somehow Jerome inserted the word Lucifer, which in Latin means light bearer. So how does light bearer equate to he who boasts in a foolish rage? It's not even the same concept. So they believe that Lucifer is God, Lucifer is Christ, and the Sumerian text traces Enki to Lucifer, Marduk, who was, the nephew of Enki, the son of Enlil, and this is all ancient Babylonian stuff that gets resolved at the end of days. That's what Sitchin was saying, that these gods are going to come back and return through Nibiru. Now, I was told that Yeshua, he returns also with, alongside with Nibiru. So it's suffice to say, it's a divine appointment.
Thank you, man. We've almost gone for an hour and a half here, so that's cool. That's cool that we've gone this long. Unfortunately, I think I may have to make this interview free for everybody now, which is okay. I don't mind doing that because I never got a chance to announce the rest of this pay-per-view. Unfortunately, don't really have much time to talk about a lot of the ETs and angels and all that. Although you did touch on it briefly, but did we have to? I don't know. I think you did that in most of that anyway in your most recent interview, which I think was on Portal to Ascension, or was it Leak Project? Well, either way, folks, just type Ella LeBain in YouTube search, and you'll find past interviews where she talks about that much more than we ever did in this interview. One final subject, though, I want to close on before we call this a day. Sticking with some of this current stuff. Talked a lot about Israel and all that, and well, David Icke, the great British orator, has been saying for a long time Rothschild Zionism is the elephant in the room, and something has to be done about it. And he's actually said if he had to pick one place where the global the powers that be system would mostly stretch out their tentacles from, it would have to be the Zionist factions of Israel. Now, with that being said, there is one particular figure in the world today who I have really have my sights on, and a lot of people try to downplay his influence, but I don't really know if they should downplay it. That individual is Henry Kissinger, Dark Lord of the Zionists, King of the Bilderberg Group, and de facto Emperor Palpatine of planet Earth. I think you might actually say he is in some regards. Word on the street is he's been cloned at least once, which would make sense considering the Rockefellers, whenever they try to tell someone, you do what we say, and the guy says, I'm not scared of you, I'm not going to do anything. Rockefellers snap their finger, and Henry Kissinger comes out from behind the curtain and says, no, you better do what we say, or my means you're going to have make mincemeat out of you or whatever. And it's probably a clone of Henry Kissinger. The real one is probably acting as a wizard behind the curtain, and also makes you wonder when Donald Trump, he had, I shouldn't say his name on YouTube. What are they going to do now? But anyhow, he had a meeting with Henry Kissinger back in 2017. And while I was always sure that Donald Trump, the man, wanted to be a good president and wanted to be able to do what JFK was going to do before you guys brains blown out in Dallas, Trump, he wanted to be a good guy, but he was compromised, particularly by the Zionist factions. David Icke even made that clear and showed some evidence for that. And Henry Kissinger allegedly told Trump in that 2017 interview, you will do what my means and I tell you to do, or else you and your family will be dead. Although Trump did actually seem to suggest he's not scared of Kissinger, considering that Kissinger was on the White House advisory panel, as was the late Madeleine Albright at the time, and Donald Trump gave him both the boot off that panel, which makes you wonder how much influence does he have. So the thing about Henry Kissinger, some say he's probably sitting in a rocking chair waiting to die any day now. But I say, oh no, I'm sure he's doing no such thing. He's been trying to further a New World Order agenda for over half a century or something like that. Do you actually think he's going to go down easily? No way. He's going to continue to push his New World Order agenda, even though if he knows he's going to lose. And he's probably going to even make any attempt to do it himself if he has to, considering that, okay, the evidence shows my New World Order agenda is probably going to collapse, but I'm just going to keep fighting it as much as I can to make the most of all this effort I made. And Benjamin Fulford actually said that Queen Elizabeth II did not die of natural causes. She was actually killed by a direct energy death ray. And the wizard behind the curtain who did the death ray killing was Henry Kissinger. Why would he do that? Well, the Queen Elizabeth, even though she's a few years younger than Kissinger, from a longevity standpoint, he has more power than her. From a wealth standpoint, she would have more power than him. Queen Elizabeth was actually the richest person on planet Earth if you took into account the value of all her money and all the value of the property that she owned. So I can imagine Kissinger, if he wants to further this agenda, not have any of his own comrades, who he also sees as enemies because they hate each other as much as they're in a league with each other, he would actually kill Queen Elizabeth so he could further the agenda on his own without his friends, who he sees as his own enemies as much as he's humanity and his enemy, stand in the way. Okay, I babbled long enough. Is Kissinger really really worth concern and nowadays, or is he probably, some say, is he really maybe sitting in a rocking chair waiting to die any day now because he knows his agenda cannot really be fulfilled?
He's 100 years old. I'm sure he's, in God's waiting room, so to speak. I really don't think he has that much power that you give him. I don't agree with a lot of the conspiracy theories. The history is taught by the victors and sometimes told by the victims, depending on if they're given a voice. And one of the things you mentioned earlier, something about the Zion, protocols of Zion was proved and debunked 100 years ago that it was false papers that were put out that was classic anti-Semitism that was to be used during World War I and World War II against Jews in Germany. Okay, so many people in the New Age or conspiracy groups continue to reiterate this stuff without any discernment that this has already been debunked. And it's just like, pulling up the same old, garbage from 100 years ago that is irrelevant. But people want to keep it going because there's a anti-Semitic spirit in the world. Here in America, the college campuses are now called hate spaces because they're charging $70,000-$80,000 for an education to be taught hate, to hate Israel, to hate Jews. Okay, and this is a very, very big problem right now. Okay, and people don't realize that anti-Semitism is back to where it was during World War II. The level is the same. And why is that? Because the jihads, the Islamics, hate the Jews. So they have come, like they say, the camel's nose under the tent and come into America, into American universities, and they are purporting this anti-Zionist, anti-Israel. And let me just say words. The word Zion equates to Israel. Okay? In fact, it's written 54 times in the Torah. And each time it's mentioned, the word comes from the Torah. Each time it's mentioned in the Torah, it's mentioned from the Lord. Zion is his home. That's what it says. 54 different times. Daughters of Zion, rejoice for your salvation. I mean, there's so much, you can call it poetry, whatever. So every Jew, okay, is a Zionist, okay, because that is the core of Judaism. So to excoriate and marginalize and rebuke people for being a Zionist, it's like saying, okay, well, you don't deserve to have America. This is your state. Israel is their state. So Zionism, and I agree with this, has become not only religious and spiritual, a political movement since the state of Israel was officiated in May of 1948. But it started in 1947 when the United Nations did their charter, and that's what they're trying to undo. Okay, so this is what I was saying earlier, is that there's going to be this transformation of the United Nations because of the war in Israel. It's already happening. Okay, so people need to just look at it. It's like glasses, look at it through a different lens and say, well, are these big bad Jews trying to take over the world? No, actually, it's that twisted serpent projection thing again. No, it's the Jews trying to hold on to freedom, their lives, the right to live here on this planet with all the other human races. And this is my big thing. This is why the Galactic Federation, who spoke to Chaim Eshed, who was the top space chief in Israel, okay, who became a whistleblower in 2020 at the end of the Trump era, because he knew, and yes, Trump absolutely knows about the aliens, and he was told to not, and disclosure, let's not forget the dates. American disclosure that we're in right now happened during this administration. Okay, December of 2017 was Disclosure Day. Okay, all of these disclosures happened, and Chaim Eshed said in 2020, in November of 2020, that the Galactic Federation feels that people here on Earth are not ready to know who they are because and Trump knows about it. They are in agreements. They are working with America and Israel. He said this, okay, 88 years old, okay? Why? What does he have to gain? What does he have to? He has nothing to lose, okay? So what they're trying to, this is a war on freedom, okay? Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to be a man or a woman, freedom, period. Okay, they don't want, this is what people get twisted. They think, oh, the Jews are no, the Jews are trying to push back the caliphate that wants to create this new world order under the Antichrist, and that nobody could buy or sell without his mark. And if they go against him, they're going to be beheaded. Who beheads people? Only the Muslims. Okay? Christians don't behead, Jews don't behead, Hindus don't behead, Buddhists don't behead, New Agers don't behead. This is an ancient battle. Okay, so the information, okay, is the first area that gets attacked. The first casualty of war is the truth. So if people can twist it around and say, "Oh no, he's the bad guy," and get everybody confused, then there's disorder. That's exactly what's happening. Okay, Zionism is about the right for Israel to exist. Okay, so why shouldn't they exist? Give me one good reason why Jewish people shouldn't have a place to live.
And I can't give you one. And I grew up around a lot of Jewish people. I come from the Huntington Valley, which mailing designation encompasses all of Lower Moreland Township. Went to that school district. There were a lot of Jews in there for whatever reason. Interestingly, I looked on a map of the world of religions from this Atlas of the World from way back in the day, and they had the symbols of each religion in hot spots where they're not normally live, but in these hot spots there's a high population. It turns out there was a Jewish Star of David right smack in the map on where Lower Moreland would have been. So must have been pretty prominent amount of area for a map of the world to live, to show that as a hot spot. So yeah, I've been to a few bar mitzvahs. I know a thing about the religion, even though I wasn't raised one. But yes, and I'm glad you were here to set the record straight on a lot of this. And again, even though we weren't able to talk about the Cosmic Zoo a lot, that's okay. You have your website. I'll post a link to that, and people are more than welcome to.
The Cosmic Zoo.
It is. So I'm glad we got to that. Wow, my recording thing says 1 hour and 37 minutes. So this interview will be free for everybody. So lucky you. I hope the attention span factor doesn't play a role in people not wanting to listen to this whole thing. It sure did when I did 2-hour shows, but you had a lot of interesting stuff to say. I don't think people are going to lose their attention listening to what you had to say, because I sure didn't. And yeah, so this was great. All right. Okay. Why don't you quickly get out anything you want to get out, your contact info, any future talks you're going to be doing, maybe any events are going to be at, anything like that, how people can reach you and all that. And we'll close this out. So anything you want to get out.
Much. Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate it. I'm at who'swhointhecosmiczoo.com. All my books are available on Amazon and Kindle and paperback. I'll be speaking about Nibiru UFOs and the ancient civilizations and the prophecies on November 18th at Phoenix MUFON. That's my next event. And then a week later, I'm going to be doing The Truth is Stranger Than Fiction at Galacticon in the Denver Tech Center, where I'll be connecting dots to the popular science fiction and what the truth is. We talked a little bit about it. We did mention Marvel and Loki, and I have a lot of material on Star Wars and Star Trek, so I'm looking forward to that. This is the day after Thanksgiving. So yeah, so you can find me on Facebook. I post a lot of pictures that I was mentioning to you about what's going on around the sun, the exoplanets and the spaceships on my Facebook pages. So just look me up.
Awesome. So Galacticon, I've never heard of that. I don't know how in the world someone like I, who looks into this kind of stuff, could never have heard of that. Is that a yearly conference, Galacticon?
Well, yes, so I'm so excited about it because actually it was Starfest. So Starfest has been going on since the 70s. And then the group that was putting it on, they retired last year. And then another group bought it and they just changed the name to Galacticon, but it's all the same. Like they're just keeping all the Starfest traditions, and I've been, speaking at Starfest since 2015. Every year, the same "Truth is Stranger Than Fiction" panel, and so it's so fun. There's cosplay. There's so many different things to do there.
Well, thank you. I'll keep that name in mind, although I'm probably going to stick with local conferences for a little while. In about maybe 2 years or so, I'll start using my airline miles, and I got a lot of airline miles. Use them to travel a bit. Maybe I'll put Galacticon on my list of places to go. Since you're a member of MUFON, maybe consider coming into Pennsylvania to do either the Pittsburgh or the Langhorne, Pennsylvania, Philly MUFON events someday. Just I don't know if John Ventry would be okay with you. I don't see why he wouldn't, but
Oh, well,
yeah.
just if you want,
I'll
just,
recommend you. So yes,
yeah,
maybe I'll
thank
reach
you.
out to you. All right. So take care. Thank you for everything. I got one more interview to upload before yours, but I will get that uploaded today and hopefully yours within the next couple days. Take care. Namaste. Thank you for everything.
Thank you, Andrew.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. Hello.
Yes. I
Okay.
just pressed the start record video button, which means that I can, okay. It's also recording on my audio Skype recorder. Great. So, let's, I'm going to do a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 countdown. Let's say, hello, LeBain. Welcome to Nature of Reality Radio. Say I heard about you from a prior interview, like what I heard and all that. So, and then you tell your brief life story from a primary source perspective, what you experienced that caused you to do this stuff that you do in the present day. So, and by the way, if you see me smoking my pipe, that's Mapacho tobacco, really good for shamanic and clearing out purposes during radio. All right. So without further ado, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.